Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an obituary. Oh, yes. The great American pianist Gary Graffman passed away about a week ago, or thereabouts. And he was a terrific pianist. And I wanted to talk about the wonderful Sony box of his stuff, but it's already out of print. So, it's just terrible. Maybe it'll come back now that he's passed away. Who knows? Instead, I do want to mention one of his absolute best recordings. This one, Prokofiev. Oh, this is just glorious. Piano Concertos 1 and 3 with the Cleveland Orchestra and George Sell, and Piano Sonatas 2 and 3. He could do anything in the romantic repertoire. He was not the kind of pianist who had that crazy personality, although he was very witty. He was charming. If you ever read his biography, I really should be practicing or something like that. It's delightful. He had a good life. His parents had the right values, and he tried to instill that in his students. There's a very interesting interview with him where he talks about that, actually. He ran the Curtis Institute and taught piano there for many years, and he was the mentor of Yu Zhuang and Lang Lang and Hao Chenjiang and some of these other people who are splendid pianists, very talented. But one of the things he said to them, he said, their lives are so unfortunate because, in China, you show some ability, a little bit of ability, and then you wind up, being sent off to a conservatory and you have to practice for 10 hours a day. His parents wanted him to have a life, so they didn't push it ridiculously. And I really think that having a life, especially in your childhood, I don't know if it's too late by the time you get to conservatory. Thank you, Finster. And, you really have to put that kind of time in. But it has something to do with your balance and your emotional responsiveness and your maturity as a person. I really think that it matters a lot. And so he was probably a pretty healthy influence on most of these people. And like I said, he was just a terrific pianist. But this Prokofiev set here, which is in the Great Performances series on Sony Classical, and at least you can find these pretty easily because they are really iconic recordings. It's absolutely fantastic. You're not conscious of an interpreter in the crazy romantic sense. He doesn't do anything bizarre or anything eccentric. Everything is natural. Everything flows. Everything has its natural place. The sonatas too. They're just beautifully done. When you listen to them, you can't think of them going any other way, really. The same thing is true of the concerti. And these are tough concertos. I mean, they're really hard. The first is insane in places. But it's all of a piece. At his height in the 60s and 70s, he was doing 100 concerts a year. It was amazing. His joy in playing the piano once he cut loose. But he also, like Leon Fleischer, suffered from focal dystonia, and he lost the use of his right hand. So he played left-hand repertoire. He gave the premiere, I think it was, of the Korngold Concerto for the left hand, and Ned Rorem wrote his piano concerto for the left hand for Graffman as well. Really, really a gentleman. And a very, very kind person. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I knew many people who did. I do want to make a point, however, in this particular obituary about some of the shadow on his reputation that happened at Curtis. And it really is a sad commentary, I think, on the way things are today, frankly. This may be a little bit controversial, but apparently there was a professor at Curtis who was molesting some of the students, female students. And one of them, the violinist Lara St. John, claimed that she had been raped, which was a horrible thing. There's no question about that. And Graffman was in charge at the time, and there was a sense and an accusation that he did not take these charges seriously. He later said that if he had known that rape was one of the charges, he would have taken it much more seriously than he did. But we all know that in the performing arts, particularly, and it doesn't matter whether it's classical or rock or anything else, it's in the performing arts, there is an awful lot of sexual shenanigans going on. We've had this discussion before. And it's entirely possible that, in the Me Too era or whatever it is, that a guy who was 97 when he passed away, and who had to be in his 80s and late 70s or 80s when this happened, was used to a certain culture and tolerated a certain culture that today would not be tolerated. And I understand that too. But I absolutely resent using, today's values and the benefit of hindsight to go back and try and cast aspersions on somebody who had not a wicked bone in his body. The issue, remember, is not that he was the person who did any of these things. Nobody accuses him of any sort of impropriety. The issue was the way he handled somebody else's, improprieties when those accusations came to light. And it could be that he mishandled it. It could be that he didn't do what he would have done, now in hindsight. All of those things may be true. But I was distressed to see, for example, the New York Times editorial that didn't mention this stuff at first and then had to go back and correct it to include something to, besmirch his reputation because of this. I don't understand the necessity of doing that. I really, really don't. If we're going to besmirch his reputation, let's talk about the musical products that he produced. I'm all for besmirching those. That's what we do. We listen and we judge. So that's okay. You can besmirch all you like when it comes to if he made lousy recordings. He didn't. He made fabulous recordings. But if you want to do some smirching, then that's the place to do it. But this other stuff to go back and obligatorily mention it because we have to talk about how he was insensitive to the prevailing theory today about how these things should be handled. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. It bothers me. It really does. And this is not to say that those people were wrong to turn in this academic who was doing this, or that he was right not to act differently. I don't know. I wasn't there. But what I will say is that people's intentions matter. When you've led a good life, as he did, mentor to dozens and dozens of fine musicians, people who just loved him, he could have made a mistake. He wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect. I just hate to see him taken down because we consider it now politically correct to do so. That, to me, is not a good enough reason. And that's just how I feel about it. That's my own personal feeling about it. I absolutely decry any kind of sexual predation, especially in an academic setting. I was in an academic setting for quite a while. I've seen it happen. I know what it does. I think it's appalling. I really do. But it wasn't necessary to go after Gary Graffman because of something that happened at Curtis on his watch. To go back and reevaluate his value as a human being, his career, all of that stuff. I really want to focus on his accomplishments as a musician, a wonderful pianist, a self-effacing pianist, a humble and humane pianist, and somebody who truly cared about all of his students. He really did. He really, really did. And if that allowed some stuff to happen under his watch out of his own kindness or unwillingness to believe the worst, which is always a sad thing, really, then it's a forgivable fault, in my view. It really is. So that's my feeling. I mean, this obituary is not about anything wrong with Gary Graffman, just the opposite. It's about, how our culture operates and how we judge people. And I think that he had a tremendous career as a pianist, and then an equally tremendous career as an educator and mentor to other pianists, and we should celebrate that. I really believe we should celebrate that because the musical accomplishment was there, and his fundamental goodness is he's one of those artists you just can't argue about when it comes to that. And there aren't that many of those. You know, fundamental goodness is not something we generally talk about, but there were some. And I think he was one. So that's how I choose to remember him, along with Prokofiev's Piano Concertos 1 and 2 and Piano Sonatas 2 and 3. Ugh, they're marvelous. So keep on listening, friends. Rest in peace, Mr. Graffman. Take care.